Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Tuesday, April 14th, 2026 at 1:02 in the afternoon. So this afternoon, we'll be taking testimony on S327, but it's the language that we're looking at is actually S138 that we'll be looking at and inserting into S327. So we have Chair James with us from Energy and Technology. And they actually had possession of S138 and are allowing us to put that language into the Economic Development Bill. Madam Chair, welcome.
Thank
Glad
you.
to have you in Commerce. You could give us an overview of CPACE and
Sure. A high level overview. So yeah, we were excited to get this bill, S138, which I think you guys are gonna pick up and put into the Economic Development Bill. And that is fitting because CPACE is an economic development tool that, and I'm sorry, I don't have all of my notes handy, but I think that at this point, 40 states and the District of Columbia, or 39 states and DC, or somewhere around that ballpark, have authorized CPACE districts in their state statutes. So we're trying to catch up here. And basically, CPACE is, I should probably say for those in the room who have, memories, CPACE is essentially nothing like RPACE. So we don't need to really dive into RPACE because they're very different programs. So CPACE is a source of financing for commercial properties. And so that would include anything from like an office building to a mixed use project to a warehouse to a hospital. So when you think about commercial properties out there putting together their funding stack, the kind of lending that they can add to that stack through a CPACE program is usually very attractive. And it helps cover the cost of, in this bill anyway, or as we're envisioning it, renewable energy projects, energy efficiency projects. And then we took a page from New Hampshire and added resilience projects, which could get to things like stormwater and water conservation. So you've got three kinds of funding that can be covered. You can get help doing energy efficiency work, either a new build or retrofit. So thinking about things like the HVAC system or weatherizing. You can do renewable energy. So that might be something like solar panels. And then, as I mentioned, the resiliency project, and that we added a definition there, but I think those projects would have to kind of take shape a little bit. But if you think about a big project, a commercial project that's going up and they want to make sure they're climate resilient, I think that's what we have in mind. So the site and the building. And so how it works, it's voluntary. I think that's really important. And it's from a private lender to a commercial property. And so this is not state money. This is not taxpayer finance. These are private lenders who are trying to provide beneficial money, basically, to a commercial property. And what's unique or interesting about it is that the property tax bill is like, I'm thinking of it as the mechanism. So I'm going to talk about that in a minute when I get to my cheat sheet here, because this is the part that I want to make sure I try to explain clearly. But what makes them beneficial? Well, typically these are longer term loans. They can be as long as 30 years and usually pretty good rates. We had heard things like 4%, 4.5%. And we took testimony from some national lenders that kind of specialize in doing CPACE lending, because it's this sort of burgeoning industry around the country. And I think they said there are like $7 billion in CPACE loans out right now, and they have a super low default rate, 1% is what we heard. So how it works, Let me get this is where I do want to get my little PowerPoint. So first of all, so a state has to enact a statute, basically authorizing the CPACE program. So that's what this bill does. So Vermont would want to become the 41st state passing a bill that says, yes, CPACE. Then any interested municipality, local government around the state could set up a CPACE district. So in that sense, it's kind of like TIF, I guess. So the local select board would say, we want to be a CPACE town, we want to be a CPACE district. And the select board would have to vote to approve that. And my understanding is that the boundaries of the CPACE district equal the municipal boundaries. And I'm sure I'll see smoke going up if I say anything that's really inaccurate. So let's say that, I don't know, let's say that Manchester wants to be a CPACE town. So the select board would adopt this ordinance or resolution saying, yay, Manchester is a CPACE town, and we've just defined the district by our municipal borders. So then, once a town does that because they're interested, because they want to, then any commercial project located in that CPACE district can go out and seek the CPACE loan from a CPACE lender. So I'm sure you guys will be hearing from, we heard from Castle Green. They're a big CPACE lender nationally. I'm sure you'll hear from Vita. Vita is very interested in being a CPACE lender here in Vermont. So you go out and you define your project. There have to be different analyses done to prove different things about the project. And I'm sorry, I don't have that page open right now, but you need to have like, I think an engineer or different environmental analyses done. And so you have to say like, yeah, this is going to improve the efficiency of the building. It's going to do what we say, and this is how it's all going to work. And I can come back to that if you want to once I find where that is in my notes. So anyway, once the loan, the parameters of the loan have kind of taken shape, and let's say that it's approved, and the loan is going to go through, that is where the property tax bill comes in. And now I really do want to make sure, right? So we've defined the project and the portion eligible for CPACE funding. We've negotiated terms between the commercial property owner and the CPACE lender. We've attained the technical analysis of the project's utility savings. Then you have to get the consent of every other lender on the project. So whoever the main mortgage is coming from, any other lender on the project has to say, yes, we're okay with this CPACE loan being part of our stack, and we are on board. That's really important. And then the actual loan flows through the property tax bill. So while it's not a property tax payment, the property tax bill is the mechanism for repayment. So if your project got approved for a CPACE loan, you're going to get a property tax bill, and some portion of that is going to be your property taxes, and some portion of that is going to be your quarterly payment to your CPACE lender. And so we're still talking a little bit about who would maybe administer these loans, because we don't want like overburdened town clerks, right, trying to figure out how a CPACE loan is going to flow. But let's say, $1,000 goes to your property taxes and 10 goes to pay down your CPACE loan. And the reason that makes that financing beneficial is that the loan is secured by and attached to the property, and there's a lien on it. Am I getting all this generally correct? I can't, that is so great. And so instead of like a personal guarantee, of the project guy, it is the property that loan is attached to. It is kind of secured by that lien on the property. And that is what allows folks to offer these longer terms and lower rates. Now, I can see some eyebrows up around the table. So this may be where I'm gonna say to you guys, and if you have really
My
detailed
eyebrows are
questions.
down.
Okay, if you have really detailed questions, I really am gonna ask you to get the good folks in, because we are not the lending, banking, financing committee over in energy. So I'm gonna get right back up onto the high level where I'm very comfortable. And say, this is a really popular program in other states. This is not taxpayer money, this is private capital. This is a mechanism to make a commercial property pencil out by getting this beneficial funding for the energy efficiency, renewable energy, or resilience portion of it. And what we did to the bill was really not much from the Senate. We fixed some language about how the assessed value of the property that was just wrong. It was basically a massive typo that would have been very problematic. And we fixed that. We added resiliency like New Hampshire has going on, because we thought that might be really interesting for projects in water conservation. We clarified a few things that really were sort of almost technical corrections. And we voted it out on a straw poll of 801.
Representative, you help me understand, I may have missed this, why the municipality has to be involved?
For the the property tax mechanism is key to how these things work. And so it's not so much. Are you talking about in the administration of the program?
Well, so how-
The property tax bill is the key thing. That's what allows the loan to be attached to the property. It's what allows the CPACE lender to take, I believe, first position with everybody else's permission. And so, but if you're talking about like the actual beleaguered town clerk, I'm not sure that's really necessary.
Why does the select board have to be involved? That's what I'm sort of wondering, is if it means go on properties or all the time.
Yeah.
how the select board's having to weigh in, and that's an area I'd like to hear more.
All the select board has to do is decide if they want their town to be a CPACE district and approve the ordinance, and then they're out. That's it.
And I guess I was just curious as to, I wonder why they have to make that choice. And that's something I'm happy to hear more about it.
Yeah, you can ask the lead.
I missed something in the construct. So which property owners would be repaying through their property tax bill?
The
Everybody?
commercial- No, not taxpayers. So I just keep thinking of the property tax bill or the assessment as a pipeline. And the money is the private capital from the lender. So Vita, Castle Green, whatever, whoever's offering these loan products is out raising the money the way lenders always do. They're going out and getting the money. And the commercial project is responsible for paying that loan. And the property tax bill is a little pipeline that it flows through in order to receive these beneficial terms. Okay, so property taxpayers are not paying back these loans.
Except the taxpayer who owns the property, the commercial property.
Right, the property, yep, it's a private loan, basically,
Yeah, and
between a brand new hotel
Sure.
and a lender.
what's the advantage of this versus, a financing transaction where the commercial property secures a loan
Yeah,
and they're gonna pay back on the loan, and it's probably secured by the property?
longer terms and lower rates is what we consistently heard in our testimony, and you guys will be hearing the same testimony.
Yeah, and I don't get that, but we'll ask other people.
Definitely ask other people.
Thanks.
Mhm.
One more question for the chair. Thank you.
Great, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I think that you guys will find this really interesting. I mean, for us, obviously the learning curve was and would remain huge. It was, I'm excited that you're taking this language and putting it into the bill where it properly belongs. And we thought the testimony was really interesting. I learned a lot.
Good,
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Before we walk through the bill, and Michael, I know you have a time crunch. So if you'd like to provide your testimony now, then we'll have a walk through the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm Michael Yaki, Senior Vice President of Petros Pace Finance. I am a CPACE capital provider. My specialty is helping states and communities establish CPACE statutes and CPACE programs. It's something that I enjoy doing. I used to be in local government myself, so I appreciate the work that all of you have done. I wanted to just briefly answer the last question posed by one of your colleagues, and that goes to why have this? I mean, you can get a loan from a bank, from a credit union. Why would you need CPACE? And I think that the best answer to this is that CPACE was developed because of what was seen as a gap in what was commercially available. If you're trying to take an existing property and bring up the code, say for example, you want to raise your construction codes, or because of some natural disasters, whether it's extreme cold or flooding or snow load, what have you, you want a community wants to up its particular building code to deal with those particular dangers that it affords. There really wasn't any sort of financing that could kind of address that. So this does not just go for new construction, but also to ensure that the older building stock has the ability to adapt and grow as well. So it just doesn't become an obsolete building, vacant building on the street. And why we always say longer terms and lower rates is because if you think about if any of you used to be select people in your own communities, which I presume a lot of you were or were active in your local communities, you know about local bond programs or local assessment districts, where you basically try and improve an area, and those properties in that area are assessed a portion of the repayment for any bond that a municipality may put out there. Well, CPACE is essentially a single source, for lack of a better word, bond on that property. And what it does is because the assessment is only for that particular property, but because it is secured by a local government lien, and that's sort of the key word here, a local government lien, which has as its nexus what's called super priority. It becomes a first and prior lien above any other liens on the property, except for local government property tax under this legislation. And it only does so, by the way, with the consent of any existing or co-lender on the property, as Chair James pointed out. Because of that, it has the ability and it acts and is structured in a way that's very much like a municipal bond. And because of that, when you think about how a municipal bond works, it's a lower interest rate, but it's very secure, and it's over a long period of time. CPACE behaves that same way. Unlike a commercial loan, where if you are late on a payment, or I mean, let's put it in terms that a lot of us understand. In our home mortgage, if you're late on a payment, you get a kind of not so nice letter from the bank. Hopefully, none of us have ever been in that circumstance, but we probably know people who have been, that say, not only is your payment due, but if you don't make that payment, the entire loan becomes due at the same time. That's not how CPACE works. CPACE works on a year-by-year assessment. So the entire amount will never, ever, excuse me, become due at one time. It is based on being tied to the property, not to the person. It is tied to being repaid over the period of time on that property. So unlike a commercial bank loan, If you have a delinquency or default, the entire amount does not become due. It behaves, like I said, more like a municipal bond. Therefore, in being priced and looked at in the capital markets that we all work in and that local governments work in, it behaves it looks very much like that. And because of that security, and because of the way it behaves, it is over a longer time period and therefore has a sort of fixed lower interest rate. And it can do that because it is much more secure. Higher interest rates reflect less security. Lower interest rates reflect very good security. That's why T-bonds are low, because it's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. This is backed by the lien on the property. It's not backed by the local government, but it is backed by a governmental lien on the property that has priority, and therefore can take advantage of that for having a lower rate over a longer time. It's a lot like drinking from a fire hose, I admit.
Or go ahead and you had.
Oh, I'm hard time understanding the structure of the lien. You know, who's the lien holder? Who's the beneficial owner, I guess?
Yes.
And how that ultimately, you know, what the risk is for the municipality.
Sure. So the way that this is structured, and it's structured this way in every other state and local government in the country, is that there is a contract between the property owner and the local government, where the property owner voluntarily agrees to have this assessment and lien placed on their property in exchange for being able to take advantage of this financing. However, the local government then puts the lien, records the lien and the assessment on the property, and then assigns the beneficial interest or the actual lien itself to the entity that made the loan in the first place. So they then get rid of that. Also in this bill is very specific language, as there is in every other state in this country, that says, in no way, shape, or form is the local government responsible for any payment of this. 100% of the risk is on the entity, like my company, or you'll hear from Amanda Samai from Castle Green. 100% of that financial risk is on us, not on the local government. If they don't pay, local government doesn't have to shell out a dime. It rides there as a null payment to us, and when we have to figure out how we're gonna deal with it. But there is no because of the assignment, because of the strong language in the bill, there is no act. There is no liability. There is only simply the act of the property owner accepting the placement of the assessment and the lien on the property. And then it is up to us to undertake the risk and ensure that this is so a lot of the burden is on us, actually, on the front end, to make sure that you have a credit-worthy borrower in order to make sure that this happens. So, but that's a whole other thing. So that's how it works. Either the beneficial or the actual security itself, the lien, is assigned to the capital provider, and then it's our risk and not the local government. And I just want to say that in no local government anywhere in the country, in the thousands of jurisdictions that have enacted CPACE, has any local government withdrawn a program or been the subject of any kind of action where they were asked to make good on that assessment payment. That's not the deal that is made. That's not what the legislation states. That's not the protections that are afforded the local governments under this act, under this bill, should it become law.
I was just curious how you deal with situations where there's default. Say, for example, a commercial business goes and does this, they go out of business. And typically with property tax law, the municipality, that property cannot sell until that property tax is dealt with. With this being treated as a property tax, how does that interplay with how things? What my concern would be is that they have $150,000 loan that's being put on their property taxes, and now this commercial property sits for years because no one can afford to pick up the tab for that.
Okay, good question. And this is where I talked about how this is financing that does not accelerate. So if you do an assessment district in your local area, if someone, say for example, a business is not paying their property taxes, isn't paying the assessment for the assessment district for the park in their area, or what has to be cured in order for that property to be sold is you have to pay the back taxes. Well, it's the same here. And by that I mean if you did $150,000 financing of that property, it's really only that portion that's ever due a year that has to be paid off in order for that property to essentially be conveyed. This is where I don't want to get. This is where it is really like drinking from a fire hose. This is where the idea of that we are not the primary lender becomes very important, and why lender consent is very important, because essentially each property undergoes really triple underwriting. They're underwritten by whoever may have made the loan on an existing building in the first place, or your co-lenders on the property. They have to underwrite it to see whether it makes sense for them. Then the capital provider like us or Amanda's company, then we have to underwrite it to see whether or not we think it's going to make sense. And then in order for the existing or co-lenders to decide whether or not to consent to what we're doing makes any sense, then they have to rerun the numbers to make sure that the payment that they have to make on their each year, along with the payment to the bank and everything, is all going to pencil out. So that's why the chair mentioned a very, very low default rate in the country. And even with that, the fact is that there's great incentive for the other lenders on the property to cure this, because why would you let a property be sold out from underneath you and lose everything that you put on the property in exchange for like 1 year or a couple years property taxes? And that's exactly why most local treasurers, if you talk to them, will say there's a very low default rate on commercial properties, because lenders will come in and cure it because they don't want to lose everything that they put into a property based on the property tax. But again, it's only those ones that have not been paid that have to be cured, not the whole thing. And that's one of the reasons why banks and credit unions consent to CPACE, because they know that if we lend 150,000 or $500,000 or $1 million on the property, that whole number is not sitting in front of their interest. It's only the yearly payment that is ever in front of them on an annual basis.
I think I'm sort of trying to hone in on a previous question. The role of municipality, I guess, because the municipality is involved, it is therefore entitled to become that, to sort of take that first position. I'm sort of trying to figure out why that happens.
Okay. Under state law, a governmental lien always has what's called superposition, right? So if you have a mortgage on a property, if the mortgage forecloses, the first thing they have to do is pay off any existing property taxes by the local government. So local government is always number one. This is part of the local government assessment structure. So it is what's called a first and prior lien. That's the language in this legislation. Within that legislation, however, we make it very clear that the first among equals is the local government. So before anyone gets any dime from any foreclosure sale, the local government gets paid off first. Whatever's left over gets paid to us, and what's left over that gets paid to the mortgage holder. That's how it works, and that's how it works in the 30 9 other state jurisdictions in the country.
And that would be the reason why a select board would need to take a vote to become a CPACE.
Exactly, because it is an exercise of the local taxing power. What this does is it creates the power to do this for local governments, and then it is a voluntary decision by a local government to enact a program in which they agree to use that power on behalf of local property owners to enable them to find and utilize this form of financing to help them either retrofit their building or build something new in its stead.
Thank you.
Questions?
It is a lot. I gotta admit, it is a lot. But the fact is that this legislation is written in a way to try and minimize the burden to the local governments. We have communities with as small as a few hundred to a couple thousand people utilizing this in areas like in rural Idaho.
Uh-oh.
Ensure that you're not drowning local governments. And again, as I said, having been in local government myself, I'm extremely sensitive to that fact. So anyway, any more questions that you may have, feel free to throw them at me.
So I'm trying to understand the money flow.
Yes,
So essentially, as I kind of grasp it, the increment on the property tax bill is really is a loan repayment. It's going to flow to whoever is owed the money.
yes.
How does that actually happen? Okay, so it's a property tax payment. They send it to the town or municipality, right? Or is it?
Yeah.
So,
It well, there are a couple ways to do it. In this legislation, it flows through whoever the collector is for that community. And when you look at how money flows within say whoever the treasurer or tax collector is, if that treasurer or tax collector serves other things, not just the town, but an assessment district, a school district, anyone who has put out bonds, for example, they're keyed to different accounts.
okay.
And so the tax collector sends it to the account. In this case, one of those accounts would be the one that would go to the capital provider, but there's under no obligation to fill that account if the person doesn't pay their CPACE assessment. So if the money is there, if they repay the money, it goes to us. If the money is not there, it just whatever's there goes to the local government, and that account is left empty and doesn't go anywhere.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay, Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're up, Ellen.
Hey,
Good afternoon.
I don't think I've been here yet.
Wow.
Ellen Tchaikovsky, the Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm here on S-138 as was voted out by House Energy the other day. So it is draft 2.2 of their strike all amendment. I'm not normally in here, so I wasn't prepared to share my screen, but I can if you'd like me to.
Yes, please.
It's posted under my name today. It still has the highlighting from the version they voted out most recently, and so they made a couple of small changes before they voted it out. But to frame the discussion that you've already started, this bill is amending Title 24, Chapter 87, which is the Special Assessment Authority of municipalities. And so as you were just discussing, municipalities have this authority to make special assessments, which are often in the form of the property tax. And currently what already exists in that chapter is a subchapter on PACE, or as the chair mentioned before, our PACE. And it's only specific to residential properties currently. So Vermont has had this financing option for residential properties for quite a while, I think since 2011. There hasn't been a ton of uptake on that program. But a new subchapter is being created within that chapter for the commercial PACE program. I'm sorry, I don't actually have the Zoom link, Jonathan. Thank you. And initially, as this bill was introduced in the Senate, it just amended the existing PACE statute to include commercial development. However, as has been discussed, the commercial PACE programs that operate in other states are fairly different than the residential program that is in Vermont. And so a new subchapter is being created in order to provide a lot more of this flexibility around how much involvement the municipality has to have in order to get this up and running. So we're creating a whole new subchapter, so it will be fairly different than how the residential PACE program will work. So close, I'm almost there. All right. So page 1, section 1. We're creating this new subchapter, subchapter 3 of chapter 87. Commercial,
You're not up on your screen yet.
so close. All right. Oh, and I'll also just say that I am the land use, energy, and climate change attorney. I have a suspicion that some of you in this room know a lot more about financing mechanisms than I do. So I will do my best to answer your questions on some of these complex financing things, but there may be other witnesses who can address some of those questions. I don't do a lot in this area of law generally. All right, how's that?
It's good.
Great. So creating this new subchapter, and so as this is set up, the first few sections are creating new laws specific to subchapter 3 for PACE, and then the other sections towards the end of the bill are amending the existing RPACE program to just incorporate that the RPACE and CPACE, there's some overlap with the statutes used there. So section 1, 3275, commercial property assessed clean energy districts, approval of legislative body. The legislative body of a town, city, or incorporated village may vote to designate the municipality as a commercial property assessed clean energy district or a CPACE district. Stop there quickly. As you've heard, this is a nationwide program. And so there isn't a lot of discussion actually here about clean energy. It's broader than that. So a couple times it has come up about whether or not the name should change. You could consider that, but this is a program that has been adopted by a lot of other states that is broader than just clean energy. In a district, only those property owners who have entered into written agreements with the municipality under 3276 of this title would be subject to a special assessment as set forth in 3255. Upon a vote of approval by a majority of the legislative body of the municipality, voting at a duly warned meeting, the municipality shall allow for the imposition of a special assessment to secure private financing for property owners of commercial or industrial buildings within the boundaries, on to page 2 of the municipality for renewable energy projects as defined in 30 BSA 8002-17. That is the renewable energy chapter in Title 30. The energy efficiency projects as defined in 3276 of this title. Water conservation projects and resiliency improvement projects.
Ellen, does that include the 3-acre rule? Sorry.
I don't know a ton about the 3-acre rule. As you'll see that House Energy did add definitions for water conservation improvement and for resiliency improvement.
Stormwater, isn't that 3?
So that is included in the definition of a resiliency improvement.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. I skipped over it.
Dave?
Line 2, page 2 of believe I heard you say 3276.
Yes.
I go there where it says 3267.
Oh. Nope, I probably, nope. No, so 3270, that was me, I so, yeah. No,
I was under the bus.
no, I'm sorry, so 3276 is actually gonna be the next section I'm gonna walk through, and it's for the CPACE program, but there is already in 3267 under RPACE, a definition for energy efficiency project. Yeah, sorry. So the definitions here, though, as used in this subchapter, commercial or industrial building means any building other than a residential dwelling with fewer than 5 units. So, so this contemplates commercial buildings, but also multi-unit dwellings with 5 or more units. District means a commercial property assessed clean energy district, which includes the entire municipality. So, district is not just a segment of the municipality, it's for the whole municipality. Resilience means the ability of interconnected ecological, social, physical, and economic systems to anticipate, adapt, withstand, respond, and thrive in the face of current and future conditions and disasters. And that definition is used in the definition of resiliency improvement, which means improvements that increase the resilience of a property, including air quality, stormwater infrastructure improvements, snow and flood mitigation, energy storage and microgrids, alternative vehicle charging infrastructure, and fire and wind resistance. Water conservation improvement means measures, equipment, or devices that decrease the consumption of or demand for water, address safe drinking water, or eliminate lead from water used for drinking or cooking. On to page 3. So there's a new section 3276, written agreements, consent of property owners, energy savings analysis, lender consent. Upon an affirmative vote made pursuant to 3175, and the performance of an analysis pursuant to subsection B, which we'll talk about in a minute, an owner of a commercial or industrial building within the boundaries of a district may enter into a written agreement with the municipality that shall constitute the owner's consent to be subject to a special assessment as set forth in 3255. Entry into such an agreement may only occur after January 1, 2027. So this program can't start until January 1 next year. Prior to entering into a written agreement, a property owner shall have an analysis performed that includes the following components. Where energy or water usage improvements are proposed, an energy analysis by a licensed professional engineer or engineering firm stating that the proposed qualified improvements will either result in more efficient use or conservation of energy or water, the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, or the addition of renewable sources of energy or water. Where renewable energy is proposed, an engineering study showing that the improvements are feasible. Where resiliency improvements are proposed, certification by a licensed professional engineer stating that the qualified improvements will result in improved resilience. Or, on to page 4, for new construction, certification by a licensed professional engineer or engineering firm stating that the proposed qualified improvements will enable the project to meet or exceed the energy efficiency or water efficiency or renewable energy or water usage requirements of the current building code and the commercial building energy standards established under 30.6 section 53.
Under the resiliency improvements,
Mhm.
is there a specification of how high you want that resiliency to be?
There isn't. I think the language only just says that it will improve resiliency. Yeah, result in improved resilience. And so I don't think currently we have any specific resilience requirements. House Energy did talk about whether or not this is akin to flood proofing requirements in zoning, but no, there isn't a specific level required here, just improved resilience.
I had a similar question, going back a little bit to the aforementioned section 3267 for energy efficiency projects.
Mhm.
And I was trying to find what that definition is. It seems a little bit, I was just wondering if that's commonly known, or I was wondering what the constants of that, because it seems to refer to some other statutes.
Sure.
And I was getting a little bit, what would be on the table, sort of.
So I believe the definition that's in there right now is that the Efficiency Vermont will create a list of projects that will meet the definition of energy efficiency project.
Okay.
And so they previously did that as part of the existing PACE program. And so that is a statutory definition that you can change or require additional specificity on.
It seems to this 3209 D, and there, I realized that he is a terms listening about this. And, but I just realized,
Yes.
but so that statute broadly administered is delegating to Efficiency Vermont some, decision making about. Okay.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, yes.
All right. On page 4, subsection C. A written agreement shall provide that the length of time allowed for the property owner to repay the assessment shall not exceed the life expectancy of the project. In instances where multiple projects have been installed, the length of time shall not exceed the average lifetime of all projects weighted by cost. That I'm not so sure of, but an easier example, so the example I think I talked about is solar panels have an average lifespan of between 20 and 30 years. I'm not entirely sure how they weight it by cost, but I suppose a solar panel would be cheaper than flood-proofing the entire building.
So this is, we're 10 years in the windmill, 5 years in the solar panel. We're also accounting for how much the cost is of those things, so we're not. Is that true?
I think so. I think whichever is the more costly project would be the what you base the lifetime on.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, I'm just having it. When we say project,
Mhm.
isn't the project? You want to install solar panels, I've installed it, the project's done.
Right, and I think though that sometimes they have, because there's a lot of different types of projects that could qualify, I think some of the buildings are doing multiple of those. And so it may be the addition of solar panels on the roof, but it may also be heat pumps also. And especially with new construction, a few different types of project for a building that's being newly constructed would qualify as a PACE improvement.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm getting at is that you build a building and you're doing all of these things. And at some point it's finished. You're done with the project. And then it's just the building with all of these things. So are we talking about the length of time, the life expectancy of solar panels or heat pumps or whatever, and not the project? Because I think, it's going to take me 2 years to build a building. So the project's over with. So does that mean I have to pay my loan back at the end of when the project is done? See what I'm saying with using the word project?
Is the word improvement better, the life expectancy of the improvement? Is that
Sure. Maybe, yeah. There wasn't a ton of discussion on this previously, so if it needs to be clarified, happy to suggest maybe improvement.
Is that where the stabilization is relevant? That like there's that consideration. And so I'm wondering if that's also when is that stabilization achieved? If that's the same thing we're talking about or something different.
Yeah, if you're saying that the life expectancy of solar panels is 20 years, and I have 20 years to pay for it, but it's not a project.
Something different.
happy to, whatever we can make it
I
work.
see where you're going and I agree. I think improvement's a much better word.
Right.
Then we get into another piece. So if we're doing resiliency, right? And so if we're making it flood resistant, then your improvement is ongoing forever. So how do we zero in on
The life expectancy.
the
of
life
that.
expectancy of resiliency?
So we might have to cap that with a year
There is a, and
or a maximum of X years.
there is language on that specifically further in, there is a maximum of 30-year payment, I believe. Yes, there's a maximum time at 30 years, and so perhaps,
So the loan can't go for more than 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the resiliency question, that's fine. But it's, yeah,
and so I guess you could consider whether or not you need to make the statement here if there is also a maximum time set later in the bill.
Question.
All right. Subdivision 2, notwithstanding any other provision of law, a lien under this section is a first and prior lien on the property, subordinate only to a lien for property taxes from the date on which the notice of special assessment is reported until the assessment, interest, or penalty is paid. And runs with the land, and that the portion of the assessment under the assessment contract that is not yet due shall not be accelerated or extinguished by foreclosure of a property tax lien or any other foreclosure.
does that mean that if the property goes up for tax sale, if somebody purchases it, they're taking on the loan?
Yes. And they only have to pay what has already, if there's any delinquent there, for that portion, it doesn't accelerate the rest
Okay,
of
so
the loan.
then they're on same schedule
Yes,
as the previous owner.
yes,
So it's a transferable loan.
yes, the loan is on the property, not with the borrower.
So it makes it special.
And so I'm still on that topic. In the event of a foreclosure action, all payments on an assessment under the subchapter that are due and unpaid as of the date on page 5 of the action is filed, and all payments on the assessment that become due after that date and that accrue up to and including the date title to the property is transferred to the mortgage holder, the lien holder, or third party in foreclosure action shall be paid in order for title to transfer.
This was my concern.
What's that?
This was my concern is if that's gonna transfer the property. You have someone, maybe it's sat there for 3 years, all this renewable stuff is completely dilapidated.
Yeah.
And now I'm responsible for paying the loan that I'll never reap benefit of, or I won't reap as much benefit from.
Well, you probably won't buy it then.
I probably won't.
Line 5, subdivision 3, a capital provider shall disclose to participating property owners each of the following: the risks associated with participating in the program, including risks related to the failure of participating property owners to make payments and the risk of foreclosure, and the provisions of subsection H of this section that pertain to prepayment of the assessment. Which we'll get to the next page, I think. The notice of an agreement shall include at least each of the following: the name of the property owner as grantor, the name of the municipality as grantee, the date of the agreement, a legal description of the real property against which the assessment is made pursuant to the agreement, the amount of the assessment and period during which the assessment will be made on the property, a statement that the assessment will remain a lien on the property until paid in full or released, and onto page 6, the location at which the original agreement may be examined. Prior to entering into the written assessment contract, the property owner shall obtain and furnish to the municipality a written statement executed by each holder of a mortgage or deed of trust on the property securing indebtedness in their sole and absolute discretion that consents to the assessment and indicates that the assessment does not constitute an event of default under the mortgage or deed of trust. This is the lender consent. So the lenders of any other mortgages on the property have to consent because this lien is going to be a first and prior lien above them. Subsection F, the combined amount of the assessment plus any outstanding mortgage obligations for the property shall not exceed 90% of the appraised real property value of that property as stabilized or as complete. With respect to an agreement under this section, the assessments to be repaid under the agreement when calculated as if they were the repayment of a loan shall not violate 9 VSA sections 41A, 43, 44, and 46 through 50. So these are statutes in Title IX regarding the laws around interest and how interest can be calculated on a loan. I don't know a ton about them, but they can't violate those provisions. And with the exception of some additional language at the end of the book, because CPACE will be exempt from the requirement that there be no prepayment penalties. But we'll talk about that. The contract terms agreed to by the lender may include prepayment penalties. And the maximum length of time for the owner to repay the assessment shall not exceed 30 years. For projects under subchapter 2 of this chapter, which is residential PACE, there shall be no penalty or premium for the prepayment of the outstanding balance of an assessment under this subchapter if the balance is prepaid in full. Projects under this subchapter 3 are not subject to these provisions, but shall be determined by the private agreement for financing of improvements. So that's what I was just mentioning. There's another section at the end of the bill that also makes that clear that there's an existing law that says you can't have a penalty for prepayment on a loan. Some programs are exempt from that, including residential PACE. This program is not exempt from that, and so it is determined by whatever the lender puts in the financing agreement. On to page 7.
Ellen, do you know if that's a national thing, the prepayment penalty?
I do not know. I'm not sure if any of the other witnesses you'll hear from may know more about that. All right.
Because number one, this money's patient and it's lower interest rates that if you prepay. Could.
My understanding is it's fairly common to have prepayment penalties in commercial lending.
Okay, top of page 7, subsection I. Property must be eligible for financing if otherwise qualified improvements were completed and operational not more than 36 months prior to submission of the application to the program. Waivers to the 36-month requirement may be granted in the sole discretion of the program administrator. And so we'll talk about that in the next section, program administrators. There's an option for the municipality to contract with someone else to administer this program for the municipality.
Or the municipality can administer as well.
Yes. Yes. So section 3277, program administrators. CPACE program administration. An entity that administers the commercial property assessed clean energy program or CPACE program under the subchapter shall be referred to as a program administrator. A municipality, a public agency, or a private entity may serve as a program administrator. However, a capital provider or lender shall not serve as a program administrator in a municipality where it is also lending.
So a capital provider could be,
Yes,
as long as they're not lending in that municipality.
yes. A municipality that has adopted a CPACE district may enter into a contract with an entity to serve as the program administrator and to administer the functions of the CPACE program for the municipality. Or serve as the program administrator itself to administer the functions of a CPACE program, including entering into CPACE agreements with commercial property owners in its jurisdiction and collecting CPACE assessments. On to page 8. An entity may enter into a contract with a CPACE municipality where the entities shall serve as a program administrator in the municipality and collect fees necessary to administer the CPACE program.
Are they collecting fees from the municipality?
Yes, so there's existing authority in the existing PACE program that municipalities are allowed to charge fees to to cover the administration of the CPACE program. This would allow the, if the program administrator was another entity, they may also have that authority to collect fees if they need to. So it would, I think it would be just on those entities that they were collecting the special assessment. So just the entities that were participating in the commercial PACE program.
And would those fees be included in the yearly tax bill?
I believe so, yes.
Sorry, just. So a municipality that is administering a CPACE loan in its own municipality can also collect fees for that administration.
Yes.
And the municipality could do that for other municipalities also, and it's just collect fees and be that administrator for another municipality.
Yeah, I believe the underlying RPA statute does say that. It hasn't been discussed here if a municipality can serve for other municipalities, but I think the language is broad enough for that. Yeah.
Can you check into that?
Yeah, all right, subsection C. Other than the fulfillment of its obligations specified in a CPACE agreement, neither the program administrator nor a municipality has any liability to a commercial property owner for or related to energy savings or resilience improvements financed under a CPACE program. And then subsection D. This is one of the things that House Energy was just working on. You may want to consider if it should be a session law provision, because it is a report back from the Department of Financial Regulation, so it's a one-time thing. So the Department of Financial Regulation shall consult with relevant stakeholders, including the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, the Vermont Economic Development Authority, Efficiency Vermont, the Vermont Economic Progress Council, the Regional Development Corporations, and agencies from other states with CPACE programs in order to identify appropriate entities to serve as program administrators. On or before December 15th, 2026, the department shall submit a report on recommended program administrators to the House Committees on Commerce and Economic Development and on Energy and Digital Infrastructure and the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Energy. So
One I had. Wondering if this will go to finance as well.
Finance did not take possession of this bill on the Senate. They did a drive-by.
But I think they probably will want to see the report.
Okay. And so I did just want to flag, there was discussion about whether or not there should be a required approval from the Department of Financial Regulation about some entity becoming a program administrator. But right now, this is just having them report back on appropriate entities to serve as program administrators. But there isn't a statutory requirement that they be from that list, so you may want to consider if that's. Yeah. All right, so that ends.
I'm confused as to why we need a study.
Yeah. I mean,
We'll talk about that.
yeah, I don't know that we. Is there a need that we have to name someone to be the administrator?
So as the statute is written right now, no. In the Senate committees, they were going back and forth about whether or not they should either name a single entity or have an approved list of entities. And then they didn't specifically decide, but they did ask for DFR to weigh in. And so as of right now, even if they've reported back to you with a list of entities, there's no requirement that it be someone from that list of entities, but there is a little bit of a disconnect there.
Jonathan?
Do you recall, do others, is it common in other states that HCPACE does have an administrator?
Yes, and I believe there's a couple different ways that states have structured it. Some of them, I believe Connecticut, their Green Bank serves as the program administrator. And in Maine, I believe it's their efficiency utility serves as the program administrator. And then I believe a few other states have it sort of more ad hoc, as we're kind of talking about here of different municipalities that have different options. But I think maybe we hear about that from some of the other witnesses if there are other models.
The program that is being administered is the keeping track of those payments to property tax payments.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. And I think you're gonna hear from Efficiency Vermont today, under the existing PACE program in Vermont. There wasn't necessarily the specific identification of a program administrator required in statute, but Efficiency Vermont did provide guidance to municipalities on what types of projects were eligible, and some things like that. So they had an administrative role related to PACE previously.
This may be for someone else, and maybe I missed it too. So we came to the end of that subchapter that talks about the program, the new program. And there's a definition that defines district at the beginning, and it's called the district is a commercial property assessment industry district that includes the entire municipality. I'm trying to figure out how that concept of the entire district and the entire municipality comes to play in the financing scheme. If the assessment is really just on the property, I just don't understand this, something I'm missing.
I do think it is a little awkward. I think it may be an extraneous term. You might not even need to define it. There is the interest, though, in making sure it's clear that a legislative body of municipality is voting a town will participate in this program.
Sure.
And so I don't know that the word district is needed.
Okay. Somebody else can.
And I think what the Senate committee discussed, though, was they wanted to make sure that it was clear what types of buildings were eligible under this part of it. And so that is the way that the use of district is how it is framed in the residential PACE program.
Okay.
And so it's carried over from,
Oh, the other
that.
subchapter.
yeah.
I see.
So it may not be necessary to the understanding, but that is how it is intended to work, is to cover the entire municipality.
Jonathan?
Would you otherwise have to have an affirmative vote of the select board for every instance of utilization of CPACE otherwise?
No, and I'm not sure that I'm not sure if any other states have framed it that way, but as was created with the initial PACE program for residential properties, the whole town had to vote and consent to create the town as a district eligible for this financing mechanism. So it's a holdover. I'm not sure if it's entirely necessary. So the rest of the sections here are amending the existing residential PACE program. So first, 24 VSA 3263, cost of operation of the district. I mentioned this before. They have the authority to collect fees. So the owners of real property who have entered into written agreements with the municipality under 3262, which is the residential PACE program, shall be obligated to cover the costs of operating the district. A municipality may use other available funds to operate the district. So that's the existing statute. A municipality may charge fees to cover the operation of a CPACE program under subchapter 3 of this chapter. And so I already mentioned that before. There's authority also in subchapter 3 for fees.
Sorry, just to confirm, those fees would be assessed on the program participant.
Yes. Section 3, let's just clarify that. I believe that is the intent, and if it is not clear, happy to include more specific language if it's not. Section 3, 24 VSA 3264, so still in the residential case program, right of property owners. A property owner who has entered into a written agreement with the municipality under 3262 residential case or 3276 C phase may enter into a private agreement for the installation of construction of a project relating to renewable energy as defined in 8002-17 or relating to relating to energy efficiency as defined in 3276. You may want to consider if this is unnecessary because the first part was amended to also include resiliency project, which wasn't currently part of residential pace. So you could maybe get rid of this section. Don't. It may be redundant or in conflict slightly. Section 4 is amending 24 VSA 3265 liability of municipality. A municipality that incurs indebtedness or otherwise finances projects under this subchapter will not be liable for the failure of the performance of a project. A municipality that incurs indebtedness for bonding under the subchapter shall pledge the full faith and credit of the municipality. And so those two subsections are specific to our pace and their existing law. Subsection C is added. A municipality that enters into a written agreement with a property owner under subchapter 3 of this chapter shall not incur any indebtedness or otherwise finance projects under this chapter, nor shall be liable for the failure of the performance of a project or pledge the full faith and credit of the municipality. So I think this statute captures the primary differences, which are pretty big between residential case and commercial case. The municipality is a lot more involved on the hook for the indebtedness. For residential case, that is not true for commercial case. Section 5, 24 VSA 3268, release of lien. A municipality shall release a participating property owner of the lien on the property against which the assessment under this subchapter or subchapter 3 CPs is made upon full payment of the value of the assessment. Notice of a release of a lien for an assessment under this subchapter or subchapter 3 CPs shall be filed with the clerk of the applicable municipality for reporting in the land record of that municipality. Section 6, 24 VSA 3255, collection of assessments, liens. Special assessments under this chapter shall constitute a lien on the property against which the assessment is made in the same manner and to the same extent as taxes assessed on the grand list of the municipality, and all procedures and remedies for the collection of taxes shall apply to special assessments. Notwithstanding subsection A, a lien for an assessment under subchapter 2, residential case, shall be subordinate to all other liens, on to page 11, on the property in existence at the time of the lien for the assessment is filed on the land records, shall be subordinate to a first mortgage on the property reported after such filing, and shall be superior to any other lien on the property reported after such filing. In no way shall this subsection affect the status or priority of any municipal lien other than a lien for assessment under subchapter 2, which is residential case. However, new language for subsection 3, subchapter 3. A lien for an assessment under subchapter 3 of this chapter shall be exempt from the provisions of this section, and upon receipt of consent from lenders pursuant to 3276E of this title, shall not be subordinate to all other liens on the property in existence at the time the lien for the assessment is filed to the land records. So this is another way that residential pace is different than C-PACE. As you've heard before, it is the first, and C-PACE is a first and prior lien on the program, on the property. It requires consent for the other lenders so that the other mortgages or liens on the property are subordinate to C-PACE, which is different than how residential case works. And then finally, as was mentioned before, section 7 is amending 9 VSA section 46, which is related to these prepayment penalties. So section 43 of this title relating to deposit requirements, and section 45 of this title related to prepayment penalties shall not apply, and parties may contract for a rate of interest in excess of the rate provided in section 41A of this title for the following types. So section 41A says states what interest rate cannot, it establishes what interest rates cannot exceed unless otherwise stated in law. And then there's this language regarding prohibition on prepayment penalties as well as deposit requirements. And it's adding to the list of exceptions to these laws, the commercial PACE program. So this is consistent with the section, with the language that's been added in the new subchapter 3 that obligations incurred for commercial properties such as clean energy projects do not have to comply with the requirements for the interest requirements, the deposit requirements, or the prepayment penalties. Penalties of prepayment. It is the parties are allowed to contract those terms between the lender and the party taking the loan. So it's exempt from those requirements in chapter 9. And then the effective date here is July 1, 2026.
The fees that the administrator can charge, is that would those be determined through contract negotiations with the municipality?
There isn't any specificity on that. It just says the municipality has the authority to cover the costs incurred for operating the district. So you can add detail there. It isn't specific right now about how that is specifically calculated, other than that the municipality has the authority to do that.
The requirement that the administrator, the town's municipality, not the administrator, they have to contract with the administrator. Have to contract with some administrative program.
The municipality does not have to hire a program administrator.
Right, but if they chose,
Oh, yeah.
if they choose to, they don't want to do it.
Mhm.
Do we have language in there that says it has to be in the contract?
Yes, I think it says enter into a grant.
Okay, so I think in those cases, then there would be a discussion between whoever is who's providing the services with the municipality on what they would charge. But is there, and there's no discussion with the property owner to make sure that those fees are jet fees and not overstated?
No, there's nothing else specific to that.
Any questions for Ellen? Thank you very much. Here's my administration. Thanks, Ellen. Megan? I got it. Whoa, that might be.
Good pity.
Start our week off with winging it. Why
Oh, cheers. Okay.
not? Make it
So,
taller.
There we go. Okay, it's open for table.
Good afternoon, committee. Megan Sullivan, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Vermont Chamber of Commerce. I am excited to be back with you today. I think the last time I was sitting here, I was going right from here to rush into House Energy so I could testify on this bill. So now I'm back before you all to
Back we are.
testify on it, which is great. So we're excited about the opportunity for the state to adopt CPACE legislation. As Chair James mentioned, this is a tool that 38 to 40 other states currently have in place, and we think has opportunity to be used in Vermont. We find this to be really timely right now, given what's happening at the federal level. Federal energy efficiency and renewable energy incentives that have historically played an important role in helping property owners offset the cost of important energy upgrades are scaling back or ending in 2025. And that creates a financing gap for commercial property owners and businesses seeking to invest in these efficiencies, in renewable energy and in resiliency improvements. So as federal support becomes less available, this state-enabled financing tool becomes increasingly important. And CPACE creates a practical tool for any voluntary mechanism that helps address the gap. And I think it's important that this is voluntary for all involved. It's voluntary for the towns to adopt becoming a district. It's voluntary for the property owners and for the lenders involved. So it really is, it's a tool in the toolbox that people can use if they so choose. This language and the intent behind it aligns closely with the goals of the Vermont Economic Action Plan, which I know I've talked to you all about before, emphasizing efficiency, economic vitality, and a competitive business climate is central to the state's long-term economic success. By enabling long-term financing for efficiency and clean energy investments, it supports cost reductions for businesses, encourages private investment, and strengthens commercial infrastructure to improve overall business competitiveness in the state. So it's, I think, a real win-win of both reducing costs to operate a business, improving long-term competitiveness, and helping us meet our long-term climate goals. So you've heard a little bit or a lot of it about how this mechanically works. So I will skip a little bit of that, but I am going to give you some examples from what we've seen in other states that have CPACE currently in place. So some projects have helped small commercial properties, including a thrift store in Good Thunder, Minnesota, that used CPACE financing to install LED lighting and generated for that small business meaningful annual energy savings and a strong return over time. Similarly, in Worthington, Minnesota, they financed lighting and HVAC upgrades through CPACE and identified significant long-term savings for that small business. We've seen CPACE support larger commercial and mixed use. In Colorado, statewide CPACE program facilitated more than 120 projects across 39 counties, leveraging over $250 million in private capital for clean energy and efficiency improvements. It's been used for transformative redevelopment and sustainability projects. In Omaha, Nebraska, a $205 million mixed-use downtown redevelopment incorporated nearly $25 million in CPACE financing for energy upgrades across residential, hotel, and retail space. In Chattanooga, Tennessee, they relied on CPACE financing as part of a historic renovation that included energy and sustainability improvements. And in New Haven, Connecticut, Hotel Marcel became the nation's first net zero hotel through CPACE financing investments for an all-electric system and high-performance building design. And then we've also seen it used for community and institutional buildings. YMCA in Connecticut installed a combination of heat and power systems and lighting upgrades, resulting in positive cash flow for the first year of operation. So taken together, I think these are examples of how CPACE can be used across the economy to reduce operating costs and attract private capital, support job creation, and improve building performance. There's been a lot of work from when the bill was initially introduced to how it's coming to you to incorporate concerns that have been raised both by potential users and by lenders to make sure that this is a program that meets everyone's objectives. Other lending CPACE states, including California, New York, and Connecticut. Oh, sorry. Something. I'm gonna leave it there in terms of just our general support for creating new economic development tools for our state to use, especially right now, when reducing the use of energy is both a climate and business imperative for competitiveness. So appreciate the committee's consideration of this bill, and I'm excited to see it hopefully be added to the economic development bill for the year.
Questions for Megan?
One other thing I actually will add is that since CPACE has started to be under consideration, we have heard from folks who are doing major redevelopment projects in the state that are excited about the opportunity for this, as well as folks operating in the manufacturing and tourism sector who are looking at opportunities to do efficiency work and see this as a really valuable tool that could be added for their ability to do those projects. So I think there is excitement growing in Vermont seeing it as a possibility.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Megan. I'm curious about the sort of evaluation of the stabilized value of the property and how that. That seems optimistic that this which is a good thing, that we will restore this valuation and to kind of work from there. Which that seems a little bit unique to me in terms of to actually build off of that value as opposed to appraised value.
And this was an important piece that came up because if you were talking about the appraised value of a piece of blank land, 90% of that is almost nothing. And so you're really not going to be able to have much to lend off of. So this is standard in other states that it's either or. I assume our lender friends that are here can talk a little bit about. No.
They'll be up next.
Yeah, how that can, how that works out. But that's the biggest standard practice because the appraised value could be on a blank piece of land.
Curious, are you aware how or if this overlaps with Efficiency Vermont?
So Efficiency Vermont, I know, was involved in the RPACE program as the administrator, I believe. So I don't know if in this case they could be the lender, or maybe they would be the organization who's doing the improvements that are getting financed.
Oh, I guess I was more asking about funding for Efficiency Vermont provides some funding or rebates for resilience and
Yeah.
efficiency plan, those kind of things.
I think what we
You might not be the right
yeah,
person for me to ask.
in those commercial and industrial, you know, especially these highly complicated capital stacks, the more, you know, they may need both, right? You're gonna be working through Efficiency Vermont that is getting some rebates as well as needing to finance the rest. So, you know, Efficiency Vermont can certainly speak much more to this than I can, but in the House Energy meeting that happened in October to really talk about what's going on with federal funding for efficiency projects, and it's pretty dire. So having this tool now seems like a good opportunity to help keep moving the needle.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thanks, Megan D. Chris, you want to join us next?
Sure. Oh, wait, I have a question.
Oh, that's under me.
Okay. Do you have a sense of, in the other 38, 40 states that have this, like, what's the uptake?
I think it depends on the state, on how much it gets used. I've heard anecdotally, and if the CPACE lenders are speaking later, maybe they talk more, but Connecticut has been really successful in this. Colorado's been successful in using this program. So I think there are states where it works very well, and it's a popular tool. So you know, not to keep beating this drum, but also, you know, it's about how we let people know the tools that are available to them so that they take advantage of all these things. Is always part of fundraising. Thank you.
Cordelia.
Chairman, good afternoon. For the record, Cordelia, President, Vermont Bankers Association. I appreciate the sauna environment that you've created. Oh, ooh, dude, windows open? It's still-
Not allowed. We're not allowed kids.
Really?
You're not allowed to open the windows anymore?
We've never been allowed to.
Oh, we've opened.
Yeah.
Never been allowed to.
We're live.
them.
Anyway.
Oh,
I got you.
I got a hammer.
We would never think of breaking any.
No, absolutely not.
So, CPACE, you've had a great walkthrough. Heard from the Energy Committee. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but I'll focus on the lending component of this. So, as you read in the bill, the mechanism for repayment of the loan between who's ever gonna put the money up and the borrower is the property tax mechanism. That means it's gonna sit out there like a first priority lien. Even if you go to foreclosure, as you were alluding to and expressing some concerns, I'll share a thought on that in a minute. It's still gonna hang out there as a priority and run with the land. That's different than a commercial loan or a mortgage where property tax sale occurs or foreclosure occurs. The lender recovers whatever they can out of the deal, they pay off that mortgage and then the buyer comes in. I think you've probably heard me say numerous times, we don't like anybody sitting in front of our mortgage. And however, we're used to property taxes, and in the case of residential, so it's a secondary market that we sell to, but this is different. So in looking at this, and looking at the fact that 38, 39 other states have this, the lender consent piece is really critical. Because if I'm the lender and Representative Olson is the business that wants to borrow, and my loan with Representative Olson is $500,000, $1 million, there's no way in hell I'm consenting. I am not putting our loan at risk for what he may like to do. That's just not gonna happen. However, each borrower is going to be different. Each circumstance is going to be different. Maybe Representative Olson has $100,000 loan or something less than that. The risk is much lower in those cases, and we may want to consent. So that lender piece is really critical because even though it's running with the land, I'm underwriting Representative Olson. A piece of property is not repaying. It is the entity that is borrowing that is repaying. You're just using the property tax mechanism or collection system as the way to collect it.
Yeah.
So you still have to underwrite Representative Olson. And we're going to make sure that he's not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize our interests as a lender. It doesn't mean it closes the door completely, but that lender consent was really critical, and that's why it exists in 39 other states. The foreclosure piece, again, it's going to depend on the circumstances. Let's say lender consent has been given. Let's say the borrower is not making the payment. They're absolutely correct. Only that year's delinquency is what's due. A lender is going to sit there and think, is there enough of an incentive for me to preserve my collateral? Similar to a mortgage where a residential mortgage, where I step in and I pay it. And then I've got to find a borrower to come along and buy it. I think the challenges you were going to, Tony, is I think that pool of potential buyers is going to be smaller in the case of PACE because there may be some businesses or entities out there that say, don't take on this PACE loan or lien for the 10 years that it exists, or as you alluded to, for the handful of years that exists, and the asset has been depleted or is close to its end of life cycle. So, given all of the discussion that happened in the Senate and the changes that were made in the Senate, we are supportive of the PACE program moving forward in Vermont. It's very different than residential PACE. You're talking apples and oranges. We're very supportive of it because of that lender consent language that's in there that quite frankly protects our position if we've got that large loan out to represent. It accounts for each circumstance is going to be unique. You've had questions about the municipalities. I think the Senate did a good job. If you can say that on the House side, the Senate did a good job in protecting the municipality. They did not want any municipality to be on the hook for repaying any PACE loan that was made to a business in their district. That's not their responsibility. They I think the solution to that. The question, I think, ultimately that the Senate and across the hall struggled with is who wants to administer the program? And at this point, nobody wants to administer the program. You need to your questions, you need to have a municipality create the district because you're using that property tax mechanism as the collection. But if the municipalities had to run a CPACE program, you probably have one or two in the state that could do it, quite frankly, and that's not going to really be helpful. So it's critical to find that third-party administrator, whether they're the ones that put the money up or not. You know, you can have that discussion. If it needs to be separated, it can be separated. As you saw the hit list of parties that will come to the table and have the discussion about the study. You know, nobody really wants it at this point. But the towns need to find somebody to administer the program for them.
Jonathan, thanks. Is that because there's is there a known ceiling on what that fee could be? Is there like a market rate? I mean,
Yeah, there was, now I didn't hit every hearing, so there was limited discussion on what those fees would be. There was more of the discussion, and you'll hear from Joan and others, was it right for Vita? Vita would like, in my words only, not Joan's, in my words, kind of slow walk into this and maybe make some loans before they see how it plays out. There was discussion, should it be the Vermont Economic Progress Council? In my opinion, the council is not in the business of underwriting. They're in the business of reviewing tax credit applications, TIF applications. Underwriting is quite different, as you're familiar with. So it's just a question of who's the right entity. Maybe one of the entities that will be testifying outside of Vermont is the right entity. Maybe they won't step up and do it. So I think that's kind of where it's at now. And this enabling legislation seems to be a good approach to move it along.
just to follow then, program administration is to be understood as underwriting.
Well, no, not necessarily, because it's somebody needs to come up with the program itself. They need to develop the guidelines, the material that's going to go out to the municipalities, maybe provide some assistance to the municipalities in any efforts that they do to create the district. If that to me is one thing, the underwriting is with the entity that's going to put up the money to do the loan. They may be the same, they may not be the same. The bill, I don't think contemplates that they would be the same, but I don't see why they couldn't, excuse me. So I see them as two different books.
Emily first.
Oh, yeah. This may not be a question, but it might be a VLCT question, but in other states where this sort of thing is administered, are there typically, is there like a county apparatus that is used to help administer them, or is it always down to the local level?
No, it's not always down to the local level. For example, there are states, as legislative council alluded to, and actually you should go to the Energy Committee's website because they have an intern who filed a study with them. She's an intern through UVM. And she looked at some other states and how they administer this. Some of it is done through their energy efficiency utilities. Some of it's done through the quote green bank. They work with the municipality, but it's not at the municipal level from the administrator.
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand. Why would the traditional financer want to consent to this arrangement? And maybe that's related to what's the benefit of this arrangement in terms of for terms and length or whatever. And maybe it has something to do with first priority as the payment, or the payment of basically acts as the loan repayment.
When you say benefit to the borrower?
I'm trying to figure out, yeah, well, I suppose both, but
Okay.
first of all, why would a traditional lender
Consent.
want to consent?
Right.
So that's one benefit.
Right.
And then I'm trying to understand how the program as a whole results in more advantageous terms.
Okay, so first of all, if we're developing a new project and the borrower comes in, I could assure you, whether it's a credit union or a bank, they're going to look at the total project with the energy efficiency and say, hey, we can do that for you. Or maybe we can't do that for you. I think those discussions will certainly go on. Again, I'll go back to each project is going to be unique. And if the risks are too high to the existing lien holder, and I should say that can be in a bank or a credit union as a standalone, but also could include Vita. Because we do a lot in partnership with Vita, and without that lender consent, if we go to second, Vita goes to third. That's even more risky for them. So each project is going to be unique, and that's why if the money that's lent out there to the business is so great that the bank doesn't want to put that at risk, they're not going to consent. But then again, it may be a de minimis amount. There may be no loan on the property, and the borrower could go look at CPACE as an option for that. And it's only for the specific activity that's allowed under the statute. So you're not putting up buildings with this money. We're making energy efficiency improvements, doing resiliency, et cetera. So it's a slice of the project, not the whole project. Now, the benefit is, again, you'll hear from some of the CPACE financial groups out there. You're depending on what their cost of capital is, they can put money on the table at a lower interest rate because this is almost like a guaranteed loan. Because you're using, well, in priority, and you're using the property tax mechanism as the vehicle. And whether it's the borrower that's paying or whether it's the lender paying if there's a small loan out on the lender, or whether it's the future buyer who's going to come in and pay on it, it doesn't, you're not closing out that loan.
Okay.
Therefore, it's more advantageous because you can spread it out over the life of the improvements that you're making to it, or capped at 30 years. But you gotta find the right buyer in those circumstances, because I may not want to take on $150,000 loan if I'm looking at buying a piece of property. Not every borrower or every buyer is going to want to do that.
To follow up on this question, does this kind of allow projects to have access to other funding mechanisms, like does it give them a fewer sense?
of.
The crepes to pancakes situation.
Yeah, I mean, again, those other sources of capital, if they're lending, are going to be looking at the underwriting, going to be looking at the credit risk and may or may not want to do it. There may be other sources that are grant funds that this could be beneficial perhaps in saying, look, I've got PACE. And we're gonna leverage that loan with some grant funds that are out there. But we hear those are kind of slimming down these days. So, you know, I think the idea would be you want to leverage other sources of capital.
Is this a novel, are there any other examples of utilizing municipalities sort of right to that position? Financing.
Again, you'll hear from the lead. I am not aware of any. CPACE and residential PACE were the two that over the last decade and a half were the ones that popped up that I'm aware of.
As one distinction.
For using the property tax mechanism.
And then, just in thinking about the language that's stating that the, sort of stabilized value, or sort of the value after the improvements are made, sorry, as a comparison, is that also the way that lenders should evaluate?
I've sat at a lot of commercial lending committee meetings and I can't say that I've heard stabilized value used a lot. What I hear is what's the appraised value and what it's gonna come in at to make sure that this project meets the loan to value ratios that the lender is gonna be looking at. I can't say that I've been in conversations where stabilized value has been discussed. What the Senate had a conversation about, the Senate had a conversation about, and I also had a conversation with the sponsor of the bill in the Senate was, as you know, assessed value is very different than appraised value. And assessed value is usually something lower. And if your community hasn't gone through a reassessment, it's really not representative of what the assessed value might be in the marketplace.
And that's interesting, I guess you just raised another thought for me that we are in ascribing a stabilized value. You're doing that at a fixed point in time, you know, that becomes different over the years. I think it's good to have our eyes open about the distinction and those just a different way of evaluating projects.
Yep.
That's,
This may, I don't know that you can answer this, and I probably should have asked it at Ellen, but I just thought of it. So if somebody is delinquent on their taxes,
Yes.
and it goes up for tax sale, is it or let me phrase that differently. So a property owner pays their property tax, but they don't pay the new assessment.
Correct.
How long can the municipality still put that up for tax sale?
Good question. It's the delinquency is not on the property taxes.
But it's all linked to the.
It is linked, but the deficiency is with the lender. Not with. You're using the property tax vehicle to collect the payments. Under Vermont statute, you folks changed this, say the last year. If a property owner is delinquent on property taxes, you as municipality, Josh, please correct me if I'm wrong, have to offer a repayment mechanism for that property owner. They have to be delinquent of 1 year. And it has to be for some, I think, over $1,500. If they are delinquent and they can't make the payment or agree to the terms of the repayment plan, it's going to go to a tax sale. And then it's up to whoever shows up at the tax sale. And that buyer is going to have to make good on the property taxes. They're gonna have to make good on the delinquency for the PACE loan. Any fees or penalties associated with it. And then there's a 1-year redemption period after that. So they are not free and clear until that redemption period is over. And chances are there's no investment going on with the property, may sit there, whatever the case may be. I think, and again, we can clarify this with Wedge Council, or Josh, I'm not sure if the property taxes are current, whether the town can go to a tax sale. To me, it falls more into a foreclosure process between the lender and the entity that borrowed the money. That has its own unique circumstances with mediation, timeframes, judicial process, because all foreclosures, for all intents and purposes, go to court now. In Vermont, it's a much longer process, and in cases of residential property can take upwards of 3 years.
But it's commercial.
Right.
And just kind of play this out. So if it's in a stack and CPACE loan is in first position. So they can sell the property, get their money back, and everybody else is having their hand out. Hopefully they get some of it.
Correct. That's a significant part of the risk and why lender consent is important there. If I'm the bank, I'm not putting myself in that position. I don't think Vita would want to be in that position because
Further down the road.
down the road. So this is all about underwriting credit risk, and even though it stays with the property is not the entity that's generating income to repay the loan. It's Representative Olson's business that's doing it. Good job.
It's a good news.
It is.
You should see it.
I got to little suck.
So this. It's risky, possibly. It could also help in the CHIP program as well.
It could. I would agree. I would agree with Megan Sullivan's comments. It is another tool that, under the right circumstances, can benefit the entity that's taking advantage of the PACE loan. And again, it is part of the reason why we're not objecting to it with the lender consent language. If it's a de minimis loan that we have, or there's no loan altogether, why not have another tool that somebody could take advantage? And again, it's working in 38, 39 other states that all have that lender consent.
But if it's a big project and it winds up to the energy efficiency, resiliency, small piece of that project.
Yep.
See where it probably will.
I think those bigger projects are that energy efficiency or resiliency is probably going to be baked into that loan.
Yeah.
And you are talking about the potential for very large loans, unlike residential. Residential, when we looked at it, maybe you're talking $15,000-$20,000, depending on the system that you're thinking. Here, you could be talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. On the resiliency piece, I'll give you a really good example. In the town of Johnson, they have a supermarket with an 802 liquor store with the post office. 802 and the supermarket are gone. There was consideration at one point about building a barrier around that building, not raising the building, but building a barrier that would eliminate the potential flood impacts. To me, that's a resiliency project. I don't have a stormwater pond on my property. My property is susceptible to flooding, given these every now year events that we have in Vermont, not 100-year. I dig a flood pond on my property, that's a resiliency project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We should have about 30 minutes. For you may not. Yep. We'll have Joe.
Director Josh Hanford, Vermont League of Cities and Towns. I agree with everything all the other witnesses have said about this. We did not work with the sponsor of the bill or work at the request of the municipality to put this forward. But we're happy to support it. I'm not an attorney or a banker, but our attorneys have reviewed this and feel that municipalities are adequately protected in all ways that you've heard about. And it's a choice for them to participate or not. You've heard about the banking risks and what they need to consider. The administrator question, I think, is an open question. You know, we're not sure how many municipalities will want to take this on, what level of interest there'll be. You know, I suspect a rather important large business in a few communities will make this question happen and be brought to them. And, you know, maybe there are the right entities out there that could be both the lender and an administrator. I don't have an opinion on that per se. It is somewhat reassuring that there's so many other states that have this, and maybe Vermont's late to it because we have done so many other investments in energy efficiency and other mechanisms, efficiency Vermont. We have other tools that and below market loan interest programs and initiatives that have helped both residential and businesses take advantage of sort of having more energy efficient buildings. And so maybe that's why we're coming later to this than some of those other states. I could see examples just from my previous work of projects that are maybe largely grant funded, but the grants aren't enough to cover the this sort of additional work they want to do. And so if it's got no debt on it and it's fully owned, this is where they may go. I think those sort of the questions you asked about the tax sale and those concerns, we don't have answers. What Chris said was exactly right. There was changes to the municipal tax sale process a few years ago, which adds a full year of full delinquency, plus there's another year to redeem, plus there's a minimum amount. And I don't know how, if a business pays its property taxes in full, why the municipality would take the PACE assessment that's not paid to tax sale. There's nothing they gain from that. And that process would seem kind of cumbersome and odd if, in fact, a Representative Olson's business was paying all the municipal property taxes, but weren't paying the PACE assessment, how that would play out. I don't have that answer for you. And I don't see the benefit to a municipality stepping into that fray. That may be an area to explore. That's all I have.
I mean, I think someone mentioned a multi-municipality, you know, a few municipalities hiring a administrator. Is the language clear enough? Maybe it's somewhere else in the statutes.
I think it's silent on whether that is something that could be pursued or not.
Because I would think even a medium-sized town might not have the wherewithal to, you know, handle that program just itself.
Just working with municipalities, I feel like there need to be a real good reason for one municipality to take on the obligation of other districts'
Right, because
management if something went wrong and what sort of contracting they have, but it could be a possibility and wouldn't want to take that off the.
because even if they don't actually pay anything, the municipality is responsible for any funding. They got to oversee it, right?
Right.
And that's time.
Right. And, you know, there are existing, you know, Title 24 statutes that make clear that municipalities, the fees they charge for things have to cover what it costs. They can't be making money off of administrative fees. And so, you know, there wouldn't be an incentive there, I would see, for a municipality to be like, oh, well, we'll do it for all of Chittenden County because it could be a revenue source for us. The there are specific statutes that sort of limit that to, it has to be related to the actual cost to implement a service, so.
But if you're hiring a third party and you're desperate, I could see where you might contract with someone, and say it's gonna cost you 10 grand or 20 grand.
Yeah.
To administer it every year for a loan that's maybe 50,000.
Yeah, I mean,
That's not gonna work either.
Right, yeah, and obviously the business is looking to get this C-PACE, you know. Want to, I think, know what those fees are and what they're, and I don't have answers for those on that.
Is there any particular education that an administrator would need? We don't, that's silent of
Yeah.
what their qualifications are.
I honestly don't know. We're new to this. This hasn't been something that we have been really hearing our municipalities come to us and say they want. You know, we're in the midst of trying to educate them on CHIP, and deeply in that right now. And so, you know, we were approached at one point with the league want to be involved in sort of this administration. We just can't contemplate that.
Maybe we'll ask Ellen to see
Yeah.
what other jurisdictions are doing as far as what are the qualifications they're looking for in an administrator.
Yeah.
Jonathan?
Something about this has been on my mind is that if we had read that legislation and there was nothing in it about program administration, I don't think I'd wonder anything about it. It probably wouldn't even cross my mind. Like, well, who's gonna administer it? So it really does seem like it could be huge, or it could be not huge at all. And it seems like either way, but I did want a clarification, and I think just the chair maybe made this point. He describes municipal section that prevents them from profiting off of administrative costs and fees. That obligation, that requirement would not go along with, if there's an administrator who is a third party, they would not be bound by the same.
That's my understanding. Yeah, if someone's contracting to operate, you know, this service outside of the municipal government operating it, I do not believe they're bound to that same.
Josh, thank you. Joe?
Good afternoon. For the record, Joe Valenti, Director of Policy, BFR. I will, I think, agree largely with statements other witnesses have made. I will say that we have no concerns with the bill, and we've had recurring conversations from the time that the process started this year with Chair Watson and Natural Resources. Deputy Commissioner Ferentz has testified in multiple committees on this. Just a few things that are worth highlighting. I think first off, one of the things that we had emphasized to Natural Resources right from the start that is in this bill is really separating out commercial PACE from residential PACE. We know the residential PACE program here has been quite small. We also know that the residential program has a number of important consumer protections that other states had not had, that had seen abuses in their residential PACE programs. We didn't want any of that to be weakened, and we had specifically suggested that commercial PACE be in its own subchapter, which is what was done, and to make sure that there's no changes and no weakening to what we do on the residential side. We don't have a ton of expertise with this type of lending, but there are two things that do give us comfort here. One of them is the lender consent that Chris Delia mentioned, because I think it's an important protection that it's not likely that a commercial borrower is going to undertake a risky commercial PACE loan and their lender or mortgage holder, et cetera, is going to consent to this additional risk being stacked on. And so that gives us comfort. The other thing that does give us comfort is to the extent that these loans are made by entities that are not banks or credit unions. If their commercial loans are under $1 million, they are required to be a licensed lender in the state of Vermont. And so our understanding is as long as these loans are under $1 million, they would be made by licensed entities and our exam authority and all of that would still apply. And that gives us important visibility into how these lenders are performing. Commercial loans are different from residential. And the larger ones, if it's over $1 million, these are probably larger projects, more sophisticated borrowers. We're a little bit less concerned, but it does make sure that for the loans under $1 million, there is some oversight going on. Now onto the question of the program administrator, and this is something that we've been wrangling with sort of throughout. When this process started in the Senate, there was a concern about DFR having some oversight into this market, whether it was on the lender side or the administrator side. Like I said, we don't have particular expertise here, and we didn't consider it appropriate to add it as another category where we might want to license. Particularly, like I said, the loans under $1 million would already fall under our licensed lender provisions. But there was a concern about a lack of guardrails, and that included the administrator side of things. Now we see, I know we were debating earlier sort of what the administrator does. As we see it, a lot of it is really taking on the role of loan servicer, right? It's processing the payments, it's doing that day-to-day component. There may also be a marketing component of that. From what we had heard in previous testimony, there might be entities that are interested in being a program administrator, but who also would want to be the lender. And there was language added in this bill concerned about conflicts of interest and steering borrowers, et cetera, that said that you can't be both the administrator and the lender in the same municipality. Now, that doesn't mean that a company that is acting as a lender may decide to be a lender in one municipality, and they may be willing to be an administrator in another municipality, even though it means that they can't lend there. Presumably, they're getting some fee revenue on those transactions. But it was really hard to figure out who would fill that role. We don't have a green bank, unlike Connecticut, so that route is out. A lot of the sort of public or should I say public interest entities are also interested in lending under this program. And so what the other committees had worked out was that we would convene the different stakeholders to identify potential program administrators. And I think part of that was really figuring out criteria and recommended guidelines, et cetera. I will say we do not, again, we don't have specific expertise in this market. And we are not sure that this study requirement is necessary to that end. But if there is a desire to convene stakeholders to try to figure out the program administrator problem and the qualifications, we're happy to. I can stop there and take any questions.
I have a couple of questions. It sounded like you said that the prohibition from the lender being the administrator was added in.
Yes.
So it wasn't part of the original bill?
It was, I don't believe it was in the original bill. I can't recall I can't recall where in the process it was added in. And I know it was, because I know it was debated both in the Senate and in the House.
Yep.
So it may have been that it was added in across the hall here. I think there is value in having that, again, from a steering and conflict of interest and competition perspective. But there is that risk that it may make it more difficult to identify entities interested in being program administrators. If you can't find anyone who really is willing to do it as a disinterested partner.
And again, the administrator's job is to process the loan payments and set up the program, like set up the
They're taking on,
of the loan.
they're effectively taking on the role that the town clerk or the individual municipality would be doing in terms of reporting the obligations that can. And with the possibility, I could see in some circumstances, there may also be a marketing role there. If you want someone to be able to promote the program to businesses who is not actually looking for customers to make loans.
So there could be a municipality that is the administrator for loans in their municipality.
I think absolutely, if it's I think the concern was really thinking a larger municipality may be perfectly willing and able to take this on. It's a smaller municipality that would like to have this program, but just doesn't see how to add additional responsibilities when they're already sort of thinly staffed as it is.
And you probably don't know, but you've been involved with this for most of the session now. Do other states have this prohibition against the lender being the administrator? I'm not sure I'm seeing a conflict there for this, and so I'm just trying to understand, is it a key part of this bill, or is it?
That I don't know. I think if you, and this is just a guess on my part, I think if you can readily find an administrator that does not have a direct stake in this, and I'm again making assumptions based on, for example, the Green Bank or in Connecticut or the efficiency body in Maine, where if they're not sort of directly involved in the transaction, then that's ideal, I think, and then you don't have to worry about the potential for a conflict. It's just if there's really no one who is sort of disinterested in the transaction who's able to step up, that you run into this challenge.
Yeah, I guess I don't 100% get the challenge of like, what is the conflict? If you administer it and you're the lender, what is the potential for abuse?
So here's a hypothetical. So you have, let's say there are 3 lenders who decide to operate in Vermont offering commercial PACE loans. And I don't know what the true number would be. It might be more, it might be less. But let's say there are 3 of them, and one of them also has program administrator contracts with a number of towns. Then that lender could be seen as town endorsed or preferred, or having a market advantage sort of over the competitors.
That makes sense.
That's not to say, I mean, you could have 3 lenders and each of them decide to enter into contracts with different municipalities. And then, and it may still be competitive on those grounds, but it would raise this potential that you could have if you have the one that the town is contracting with and there are a couple of other competitors, and the one that's contracting with the town might also be promoting the program, and that may not be a level playing field for the other lenders looking to participate. That's the theory of, I think, how this would play out in practice. We don't know.
Right, it's probably more about rates and fees than anything else.
Right.
More likely.
Good. Joe, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Amanda.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
hello.
you. Hi. Thanks. Amanda Samai. I'm Managing Director at Castle Green Finance. We're a PACE lender across the United States, wherever PACE is active. And I've listened to the whole afternoon, and I know there's probably a lot of questions. We're supportive of the subchapter 3 because it really does modernize the statute that's in existence currently and allow specific uses for the commercial property side, which, as you noted, is a little bit different in terms of the complexity of the deals and also the sophistication of the borrowers. So, I'm available to answer any questions that come up. I've taken notes on a few. If I can lend any assistance to walking through some of the scenarios that were raised, I'm happy to do so. We in-house have a sister company that is a USDA lender. We see a lot of deals in rural areas. PACE works very well alongside USDA product. And, we have a number of interested property owners with these types of projects that are waiting in the wings and anxiously emailing me to see the status of legislation at the state level. So We think it could be a great opportunity for economic development throughout the state and of each local municipality. So I'm happy to answer again any questions. I think my fellow speakers have gotten a lot of it very correct in terms of the voluntary nature of it, the fact that the municipalities are not lending the balance sheet and will not stand to make any have any credit implications for the use of PACE. It all falls to lenders such as my firm and Michael, who you spoke with earlier. So if there's any questions, I know there's a lot of questions on administration. I know there's a stabilized value question, why it works. Please feel free to ask any questions that I can be helpful with.
So one of the things we heard about, thank you, Amanda, for joining us,
Sure.
is the reluctance of existing lenders occupying second, third, et cetera, position to consent. How often do you encounter that refusal to consent from existing lenders?
So I've been active in the PACE market for over 10 years. It used to be a bigger concern than it is today. And what we're finding is that as property owners are using PACE, again, over $10 billion has been done across the US in multiple states. As you know, approximately 40 have approved, 38 have approved. It's starting to really catch on with borrowers who like it. They want to use it, and they will actively petition the lenders that they have lined up for their projects or the lenders that already exist in those projects. And we can facilitate those conversations to help those lenders understand, what it means. If we think about it in the pure sense, if it is a new construction property, a new lender and a PACE lender, we work with that senior lender or the mortgage lender as closely as possible. We underwrite. We try and share the same appraisals. We try and minimize the friction for the property owner, for the borrower, and work together because that lender consent is so imperative and required. And even there are very few states that don't require lender consent, but all of the PACE origination firms require. I'm going to say, I can't speak to all of them, but it's common practice and accepted practice that the PACE lenders look for this consent, because there is no situation where we want a property owner to sort of not be in lockstep with their senior lender.
Okay. So I'd like to now learn a little bit more about your standard, but who's participating in these programs? Are we seeing, can we hear about whether these are firms that specialize in certain kinds of development, greenfield, et cetera, nationwide that are utilizing it, that are your clients, or are you seeing a lot of these smaller scale redevelopments in Vermont? We're going to have a lot of structures that are owned by or initiatives that are coming from maybe smaller fish than some large scale development corporations. So I'd like to hear who you're about, a little bit more about your client base.
Sure, it's sort of soup to nuts. I mean, if you think about a like for like replacement, property owner needs a new HVAC system, they need new lighting. There are PACE lenders who will lend into those projects, work with the existing lenders. We obviously encourage property owners to avail themselves of all incentives, rebates, whatever's available to them in the market, right, to lessen the amount of money that they actually have to borrow. So if they do have a gap that they need to borrow, and their lender who exists in the project, or that they're contemplating, their mortgage lender is not able to fulfill all the financing needs that they have, they can turn to another type of lender, such as PACE. And we see that from property owners. Our calls come in directly from property owners. They sometimes come in from the municipalities where they have entities that are looking to use CPACE, but those municipalities are not lenders, so those municipalities could put them in touch with us. We have brokers, so the national brokers, the JLLs, everybody, the Berkadias that exist out there, they're looking for capital for projects. And if they know PACE is available to a property owner in a certain jurisdiction, they will try and formulate a capital stack for that property owner that makes sense, that helps the property get built. And PACE can be, as for all the reasons that were sort of listed before in terms of the term and the rates, can be very helpful in making that work.
So, hi, I'm Lee Paris, Johnson, Wilmington, Wenningham, Halifax. Just to follow up on that question, so when in the cycle of building those capital stacks, do you find that PACE is sort of at the front end, or is it sort of a last resort situation after all of those other opportunities have been exhausted?
We do find that property owners that have discovered PACE would like to get it lined up very early. And it's helpful because of the lender consent. So if a property owner has a mortgage lender and then they say, hey, we're going to use PACE, that process can sometimes just take a little bit longer in terms of educating the lender as to the points we discussed previously, what PACE is, how it doesn't accelerate in a default, how it's only ever the annual amount. We have become far more successful in helping property owners get those consents in recent years. And that has seen through market acceptance of the PACE product, and annual originations have increased sort of over the past few years. And a lot of that is driven by market conditions. You've had periods of extraordinary inflation where projects were stalled previously, cost overruns, where property owners had to come out of pocket with more equity. So you're seeing PACE being used as a refinancing tool, or also to help projects that were previously stalled if interest rates have stabilized and property owners are now ready to move forward. So it just depends. But it is easier to find mortgage lenders who are willing to work with PACE if a property owner knows they want to use it up front and are open up front. Not to say it doesn't work the other way around. It's just how we tend to see projects.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if you could, one of the things that's been a big thing to talk about here is administration. And what has been your experience with how this program has been administered among other places where you've worked with people?
Sure. So administration is meant to help municipalities ease a potential burden. And it was discussed previously, the municipalities are not technically underwriting. Inherent within this statute are a number of criteria that have to be met. We as lenders will be underwriting, and the mortgage lenders will also be underwriting, as Chris spoke about previously. So there's multiple sets of underwriting eyes. You talked about TIF application approval, other types of approvals that happen. The documentation of the PACE follows more of an application approval process. The administration of the annual payment or the quarterly payments that come in, again, what we hope is that we're not reinventing the wheel here. Municipalities collect property taxes, they administer special assessments, they coordinate the payment of those to the appropriate parties. This, we sort of hope, is something that they know and understand how to do. The application side, CPACE Alliance, of which Michael is one of the key members, the firms in the industry have an industry trade group. That group is able to provide a form set of documents that would adhere to the statute, but also to any certain criteria that are instituted at the municipal level. So each municipality will pass an ordinance opting that municipality in under the state. You know, the states give the municipalities the option to create a district. They would probably pass an ordinance or a resolution that would create that district that would allow property owners within that municipality. Again, it's municipality or district because of the tax implications of the property tax and the billing and collecting of those. So it tends to fall within these districts, which are taxing districts. That ordinance would allow the municipality to layer in any incremental issues that they think about or that come up in discussions. And then the administrator, who could be either the municipality themselves, again, would sort of collect the documents, and the form set of documents we hope as an industry group would be uniform throughout the state. It makes it very difficult to enter into bespoke lending platforms in each individual municipality. I honestly don't know. I should know how many there are, or we could contemplate there would be within Vermont. There are a lot in Connecticut because that also is done at the town level. And there's uniform documentation for the entire state, with a few caveats here and there at the local level if the local municipality had a concern that they wanted to address. So that application process is, you've received the energy audit sort of, and it meets the energy code, as you know, all the standards that are laid out directly within the statute. So the application becomes more of a check the box versus an underwriting, and municipalities would have the ability, and there are many administrators. I can sort of say to you, there are third parties that do this across other states that have grown that practice. There are programs within, as was indicated previously, such as the Connecticut Green Bank within Connecticut and Energy Efficiency Group within Maine. It can be a Vermont organization. The flexibility really resides within the municipality as to how much they'd like to take on with regard to administering that. But again, it's really not that the documentation can be made available and can be tailored appropriately, but they won't have to create the documents from scratch within each municipality. So it becomes more of an application and agreement that this meets the statute and criteria. And from a cost perspective, those third parties, and it appropriately raised, and I appreciate that it was, from a lender's perspective, what really makes deals very uncertain are unknown fees. So to the extent the fees that the municipality might need to appropriately administer this, and it was pointed out previously that those are not meant to be money-making within the economic community. They're hopefully the building of these buildings and the payment of property taxes and the development of these properties would be the sort of revenue stream that these municipalities would realize. But the actual administration fees should cover sort of the ministerial costs and expenses of doing business. And the third parties that transact know and understand this. And if the fees on a deal are too heavy, the property owner can't do the deal because the property doesn't make sense. So we are all sort of on the same page that the fees should be appropriate, but the entities that provide this service in other states and work even in some instances state to state are accepted by the lender community and of course by the property owners, who have to know and understand what those fees could be going in before they enter into, a financing arrangement.
So I know we don't have a lot of time, but it sounds like the bill that we have in front of us doesn't necessarily follow best practice across states, in that there isn't a clear format for these loans, right? This is, every municipality can do it a different way depending on their contract. Am I misunderstanding what you just said?
You can provide the statute provides a state format and lays out sort of the criteria. A municipality, more likely than not, will say the state has done a good job. We're making this available, and pass an ordinance to create a district. And the administration.
I'm not sure that this bill does that. That's, I guess, where I'm.
Oh, I'm sorry if I don't see that the same way. I think that it does. I think that if you wanted to, at the state level, under the statute, appoint a program administrator, that is very different than how other states actually do it, because they do allow the municipalities to make that determination themselves.
Okay.
And in some instances, they do it themselves. And with regard to a lender not being a program administrator, the gentleman before me highlighted a lot of the concerns. A lender might be a program administrator, but in those instances, we would probably suggest that the municipality would enter into program administration agreements with each active lender, such that each lender could be the administrator of its own program, to avoid some of the situations that he highlighted, which is that one lender might be perceived as being recommended by the municipality, or if there were incoming inquiries, that lender / administrator may not create an open PACE lending platform and share those with the opportunities with other PACE lenders to give that property owner access to multiple options. Those are some of the concerns that limit one lender being a program administrator.
Amanda, do you know in other legislation if provides for a job description or a description of what an administrator is, what an administrator needs to provide.
In terms of service
Yes,
to the municipality, there's typically a program administration agreement. Again, which gets executed at the local level because it's the local entity that would be levying the assessment. And the local entity has the autonomy of that area and the jurisdiction of the property owner who lives within that area. So, but the program administration agreements are sort of for the PACE sector and the PACE industry across the board, fairly standard. Again, it's all the things we highlighted in terms of the application process and then the transition to closing of the deal and collection of the assessment payment.
there are certain qualifications that a person would have to have in order to be an administrator.
No, I mean, some of these third parties are private entities. So I think it comes down to the comfort level of the municipality and working with that program administrator. Again, because it's not sort of meant to be more than making sure that everything that's laid out in the statute is covered and collected prior to the assessment being levied. It's sort of more of an application review and approval than what we would deem underwriting from that perspective.
Any other questions? Amanda, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your consideration. We appreciate it.
Appreciate your time.
Of course, thank you.
Mike?
Can we take a minute?
So first, do we have an amendment do we have the amendment that's going forward tomorrow?
So. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes. Ish. And that's, so the amendment, and I can forward it to everyone.
To which bit?
This is to 218. Oh, you already posted it? Okay.
So that's fine. The Committee of Jurisdiction hasn't seen this amendment yet?
Correct.
Okay, so they should see this amendment before we do.
Okay.
So that will be tomorrow, I'm assuming?
Yes, I would assume that's the
So,
case.
so we've been asked to just review, take a look at the insurance piece that's in there, the passive. Because we deal with insurance and so our judiciary is not. They just want to make sure that we're looking at it too. So if they haven't seen this new amendment yet, I think it's more appropriate for them to see it first.
Okay.
And then we can take a look at it after.
You may not need to look at it because the redraft doesn't reference insurance anymore.
Okay, so then let judiciary look at the amendment and they can tell us tomorrow if they would like us to review it or not. If that makes sense.
I am already scheduled in there. Figure it out.
Okay. I'll have that conversation with Chair tomorrow, then if he wants us to review it, then we will.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess we solved that problem.
Perfect.
That's a good one.
Easy. Or five of us. And I can send out a Michael, do you mind?
Yeah.
It's
Okay, and so we've.
Sorry, like
here
now,
now.
later.
if
Yeah.
possible.
See on-
Peter's not.
I was listening.
I will take it. Can you
Yeah,
read?
we can see if he can come in.
Yeah, he's was waiting.
Yeah.
We still live.
Oh, we have somebody remote.
Yeah, Phil, right now, we're all set. There's a new amendment that judiciary needs to look at, and we may not even have to look at it, so. Thank you.
Bill, we're gonna call you and meet with general counsel right now.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Easiest testimony you've ever given. Okay. So, I think that's it. Peter Walk was we were gonna talk with him, but I think we'll have a conversation with him Wednesday. And I think that's it for today.